Hey guys, Peter here from Rugby Bricks. Here is 5 exercises to help you guys get back to rugby after COVID-19. Hey guys, and welcome to the Rugby Bricks podcast. My name is Peter Breen, your founder and host of this Rugby Bricks podcast. Today's guest is my wife, Jay. Now, Jay is a strength and conditioning coach and also a physio here in Melbourne, hence why I've asked her to come along. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Breeny. It's great to be here, guys.
Jay's been a massive supporter of Rugby Bricks. She was there from day one, obviously. Packing, kicking tees, filming stuff, getting told off for not being able to fly the drone properly. So it's been really cool for her to come into the podcast. The key things we want to talk about today is returning from COVID-19 and what's happened to our body, common mistakes you see with rugby players, and mobility, strength, and prehab for the upcoming rugby season, which we're going to get thrust into straight away. So I know that NRL teams, Super Rugby teams, have strength and conditioning trainers. They're probably going to have 4 weeks of really intensive day-to-day, everything planned out. But for the regular player, club player, we're going to be asked by our coaches to get back to rugby as soon as possible. We need to do more than just a Tuesday, Thursday night rugby training with the team. So a little bit of background on Jay before we jump into it. She's got a big experience in rugby. She also basketball as well. She's worked with the Junior Tall Ferns and Junior Tall Blacks, New Zealand Rugby League. She's had experience with Otago Sevens, New Zealand Women's Sevens squad. Off-season work with the Highlanders of Super Rugby. She's currently working here in Melbourne with Kinematics, again as a physio and S&C coach. She works with runners, triathletes, people getting through Ironmans, and she loves detail and minimising energy leaks, which I've definitely stolen a lot from when it comes to goal kicking and passing the rugby ball. There's heaps of conversation we've had around energy leaks. So, great to have you on the podcast, Jay, and I'm looking forward to this chat.
Me too, guys.
The first thing that we want to jump into is what has actually happened to us during the lockdown period. So we've experienced this here in Melbourne. So, Jay, from what you've seen and talking with people now, what has actually happened to our human body during this lockdown period?
We've changed the way that we train and the way that we move. So as a rugby player, it's instead of doing all the rugby drills, the movement, the strength and conditioning, now we might be going for a bit of a run. That's it. We've lost the lateral work. And after that, we might sit down on the couch for a long period of time. So things start to stiffen up. Our mobility isn't as great as it was. So shoulders might be coming forward a little bit more, hip flexors are tight, glutes are switched off, ankles can become stiff. So then trying to get up now and start doing your running and rugby training, we aren't moving as well to be able to do it as well as we should be.
When gyms open up back and when we start getting back into our normal gym sessions and field sessions, what do we need to be thinking of when we have that first session?
Definitely to move well first. I can't stress that enough. You want to spend at least probably, your first third of your session actually trying to get on the roller, get the bands around your legs, open up your hip flexors, your groin, your lats. If you can get moving well, then when you go on to do your strength work, you can actually recruit the right muscles, get the most out of your strength session, and that'll transfer into your ability to run, change direction, perform your rugby skills and drills. Yeah.
When you talk about that, so we probably had a little bit of an injury risk in the very first few sessions when we're coming back?
Yeah. That's probably the big thing, is to not get in and start trying to lift and do exactly what it was before this lockdown happened. Again, focus on your mobility. So move well, do your strength sessions, but make sure you're actually doing good movement patterns first while getting into some conditioning at the same time.
I suppose we want to talk about some differences between the men and the women's game and different philosophies and what differences you've seen as a physio. What are some common mistakes or issues you're seeing within men?
The boys just want to get big sometimes. So there was always the chat about the 1RM of the bench, the deadlift and the squat, which is great, and you do need that strength in those movements, but I think the biggest thing is that we're not going to put on mass in this time, and it shouldn't be about that really. It should be, like I said, move well. You can actually get good strength gains by just repetitive movement, basic strength work. You get neural adaptation through there. So again, focus on mobility and strength, but not about lifting the biggest weight possible.
Where else should I be putting more focus in just in this first sort of 2-3 weeks coming back from lockdown?
I'd focus a lot more on single leg work. So instead of your double leg squat, your double leg deadlift, you might do a lot of single leg. So your pistol squats, Bulgarian squats, get working on some lateral work, lateral lunges. Instead of double leg deadlifts, get your single leg ones happening. Everything's single leg based so that you've got that nice strong stability when you're changing direction and running.
Same for the upper body?
Yeah, same for the upper body as well. Definitely be getting into a lot of your back work. So if we have been sitting a little bit more in a stoop forward, you want to get that back nice and strong. And the thing too is if you can actually get some good rows, good lat pull downs, your lats actually co-activate with your glutes, for example. So if you want to be a powerful runner, you want to work on your upper back. If you can actually get some lunges with some overhead, holding a weight overhead, you get that co-activation of the upper body, the trunk, and the glutes are firing, you're going to be more powerful when you go running.
So there's one exercise to really bring into your game. So grab a 10 kilo plate?
Yep, 10 kilo plate.
Above head, and then walking lunges?
Yep, walking lunges, progress to step ups. You can get a lighter weight and do running drills, actually run lengths with something above head. Just creates that good trunk stability.
What are some common issues that you see around the women's game with women? Probably
that they actually need to get into the gym even more. Focusing on that conditioning. There are a lot of knee injuries that come about in the female. A lot of people argue that it's the way our bodies are shaped, but when you look at the size of our pelvis, our backs, we can actually, with a lot of good strength and conditioning, we can be very powerful athletes and prevent a lot of these injuries.
So again, we're going to be asked by rugby coaches to get back into contact pretty quick and back into games pretty quick, 2 or 3 or 4 weeks. When coaches are saying, right, you need to get battle hard and ready for contact, what's some of your advice around getting the body ready to take on impact?
Again, it would be mobility first. You need to be able to move well through your joints to be stable and to actually activate the right muscles. I really want to work on stability, so getting your body into different positions that are game-like sort of situations too. So we've been doing a lot of running, straight line running, but you need to get the body ready for other bodies coming at you from different angles. So we've actually got a few drills here that we will go through that actually help get your body into certain positions, down onto the ground, rolling, instability type of areas as well.
Great segue, Jay, because we're about to jump into those flight exercises and I want to hear a bit more explanation. For those people just listening to the podcast, I'm actually going to post these on YouTube, so head to Rugby Bricks on YouTube, just search Rugby Bricks and you'll be able to find it. It's us talking through this podcast, but also throughout when we talk through this next segment, it'll be showing video footage of me getting through each of the movements Jay's talking about. So make sure you go check that out. 5 exercises and areas that you're keen for us to focus on. These are the areas. So hip flexor, big emphasis on stretching out the hip flexors. Why is that?
The hip flexors have been shortened up if we're sitting a lot more. If the hip flexors are tight, they actually go into your lower back. So everyone thinks the hip flexor is just a short little muscle at the front. Well, it actually goes into your lower back. So if you're tight through there, it can actually rotate the pelvis forward. You can't recruit the glutes as well in that position, which the glutes are your powerhouse. So if you can actually open up the hip flexors, it puts your pelvis in a better position so that you can actually recruit the right muscles.
And a lot of time when we've got lower back pain in the QL, that's coming from tight hip flexors?
Absolutely, yeah. So that lower outside back that a lot of rugby players can get, that pain in there is just from that tightness.
So you're telling me my hip flexor that gets tight goes all the way up through my, pelvis?
Through the pelvis into the lower back.
Wow, no wonder it gets tight, especially kickers out there, which is a common thing. You get a tight hip flexor, like no wonder your back tightens up. The next one we want to talk about is a roll back plus a reach through for a little bit of back mobility, hamstring, groin. And I really love this exercise because it does get a little bit of neck flexion as well. And it definitely is quite relatable to rugby, falling over, rolling back on the ground. So what are your advantages that you see?
I love the rolling back part, which actually targets that thoracic mobility. So we've spoken a bit about that posture, but that actual roll back just helps get that nice movement through your thoracic spine, a bit into your upper neck as well. The come through too, where you can actually stretch both hammies and groin, is great as well. Those two areas also contribute to how your pelvis sits, how your upper trunk sits, and how well you're going to be able to recruit your glutes when you want to run.
So those two are the mobility ones that we've been talking about. We are just giving out 5. So a really good way to start your session with those two. Now we're going to go into lateral ski jumps and the progression that we're going to do through that.
So lateral ski jumps, this again is to get your lateral stability, so that change in direction. But even when you're running straight, you need lateral stability.
Why?
If you're running straight and you've got poor lateral stability, again, your pelvis will drop to the side. And that's an example of an energy leak. You're putting more effort in for what you're actually getting out if you don't fix those areas.
So we're going to start just with lateral side lunges. How are we going to progress the lateral movement?
Yep, so we start with lateral side lunges, and then if you feel as though you've got good control over that movement, that's when you can go into your lateral ski. Hopping out to the side, making sure that you actually engage the glute of the lunging leg or the jumping leg, and really focus on even your trunk staying nice and stable, your obliques, and not letting that pelvis drop down before you jump to the next leg.
The next one is plank variation. So most people call it a plank or a prone hold. We're also going to build in a rollover as well, so a little bit of stability in there. So talk us through that one.
So the plank, I love at the start because it goes back to your slings. So you've got posterior oblique sling or your anterior oblique slings as well in that position. So that's getting the co-activation. You're putting yourself in a position that if someone comes in contact with you, you're actually got a nice, strong, stable base. The trunk roll as well, again, brings in the core, the instability, and then getting back up into that position, again, is another way of stability, another way of conditioning yourself.
The last one we're going to talk about is down up. So a pretty common one in rugby. A lot of fitness people do it this way. We're just going to add a little variation of being lateral when we actually do our down up.
The down up is for the conditioning itself. Getting your body to the ground and straight back up again is a great way to get the heart rate up. It's also very functional to rugby, so you're going to be doing that obviously throughout your game. Having the sprint straight after is a great way to go from putting the body through something tough by putting it on the ground, getting back up, but then being explosive. The sideways cone part of it, so coming around the cone, going down up again at that ankle, gives in that lateral work again. And that in rugby you can come from any angle. Well, you shouldn't be, but bodies can come from any angle. So for you to be able to get yourself nice and stable back up on your feet, everyone's got a favorite left or a right side generally, so this way you've got to do both.
So one question I did want to ask before we wrap up, while we've got a physio here, is kickers quite often overload one side of their body. I definitely know from my own experience when I had this year where I just went crazy with goal kicking, I definitely found my body getting in a real imbalance. I'd quite often look down and I was standing there and my right foot was pointing off on a 45-degree angle because my hip flexor was so tight and my back was jammed up. So I guess my question for Jay is, when you're a kicker, how do you identify when you've gone too far and you've overloaded yourself up? And I guess, how do you combat it so that you can get through the amount of reps that you want to do exercises? So I guess first part, how do you identify if you do have an imbalance?
Yeah, the areas we do look at is foot position. So you yourself, you can have a look at how you stand, how your feet are positioned. The other area is your pelvis. Do you have a slight drop? Do you feel like you're rotating forward a little bit? And that third thing you can do too is even your shoulder height. So for an example, with being a kicker, if you're a bit shortened up on that left side of your pelvis, you may find that that right shoulder is actually sticking up a little bit. And again, that right foot. So it could be releasing that left lower side of your back with a bit of a stretch, getting a ball in there, a release ball, and even releasing under the opposite lat to actually bring that shoulder back down.
So back to really mobility and getting the body freed up so it can maximize the power output for kicking, which is what we want. You guys constantly ask, how do I get more distance? So therefore free up your body so you can train well. So that's how to identify it. I guess some exercises or key things to be aware of.
Yeah, is to make sure that you are activating both sides. So I would still go with strengthening both sides equally. Within the sport that you're doing, it is going to be that you are going to be using certain parts of your body more than one side. But if you can, again, pick out where your imbalances are, get them mobile and make sure that you can strengthen well, you should find that you can combat those imbalances pretty good.
I know that those 5 exercises are going to help a lot of players getting back into their game. I'd highly recommend, even if you just get through this session twice, bring it into your week. I know you'll notice a massive difference and have your body ready to go for the season when we get back into it. So a massive thank. Jay is actually going to jump on the YouTube comments, so if you do have any questions around any of the drills or want to understand anything further, just put them in the comments below on YouTube. She's going to be jumping in there over the next week. She'll answer any questions you guys have. So thanks for listening to the Rugby Bricks podcast. Please share this out with people that are returning back. We've all been in this together, and I know that the rugby community is going to find a lot of value in this video. Thanks, Jay.
Thank you, Greenie. It's been great.